Hello, this is our BIO2060 Intro to Ecology A4 research presentation project. The title of our project is Rising from the Wreckage, a 20-year journey of forest recovery in Point Pleasant Park post-Hurricane Juan. The presenters today will be Jade, Maeve, and myself.
Hurricane Juan reached Halifax in September of 2003, causing significant damage to the forest of Point Pleasant Park. Since 2004, students in Dalhousie's Introductory to Ecology class have collected data from 6 sites around the park, measuring density, average diameter at breast height, or DBH, richness, Shannon diversity index, and Pailou's evenness, covering a total of 400 meters squared. The forest at Point Pleasant Park is an Acadian forest, as the dominating tree species are the red spruce, the balsam fir, and the yellow birch. Burley et al. And Joachim R. et al. Discussed the recovery of vegetation in an urban forest after a hurricane. Additionally, Harmon and Past 2019 examined the effect of wind disturbance on an American forest. Both pieces of literature are relevant to this experiment as they interpret the impact a hurricane could have on an Acadian forest. Point Pleasant Park is also significant to the Mi'kmaq Nation as it served as a place for Mi'kmaq people to gather. It was known as Tu-Kati, or the place of the spirits. The aim of this experiment is to determine if the forest at Point Pleasant Park has recovered from Hurricane Juan and to determine the impacts like Hurricane Juan have on forests. There are 3 hypotheses within this experiment. First, the density and diameter of the tree species will change over time as the forest moves towards its climatic community. Then, both the red spruce and red maple will increase in density over time, and the current dominant species, the red maple, will remain the dominant species as the forest moves towards its climatic community. And lastly, as the forest progresses through secondary succession, species diversity, Shannon diversity index, will continue to increase until it stabilizes upon reaching a climatic community where dominant late succession species, red maple and red spruce, will outcompete weaker species.
This study was conducted in Point Pleasant Park, where 6 20 by 20 meter study sites were established, labeled Site 1 through 6 in 2004, 1 year after Hurricane Juan. These sites were selected based on areas of most hurricane damage. 2 key data sets were collected annually, except for the interruptions due to hurricanes and COVID. Those years can be found on the screen. First, tree density per species was found, counting trees of each species per site, species being red spruce and maple. Second, tree size, measuring diameter at breast height, or DBH, at 1.37 meters using a forestry diameter tape. DBH is a standard of metric in forestry, providing a consistent estimate of tree growth, biomass, and forest structure, allowing comparisons across different years and studies helping assess long-term recovery. Data analysis was done using species diversity, or the Shannon index, evenness, or Pailou's, and dominant species trends, as well as overall forest succession. Equations can be found on the screen. To evaluate long-term patterns, linear regression was used to track species composition and structural changes over time while minimizing short-term fluctuations. This helps determine whether the forest is stabilizing or still undergoing succession. These methods provide a comprehensive view of forest recovery in Point Pleasant Park over the past 20 years.
A regression analysis was performed to determine the relationship between the density of sites in Point Pleasant Park measured in 2004 to the sites measured in 2024. The regression analysis reveals that there was a significant increase in total density from 2004 to 2024, as the p-value of 5.1 times 10 to the negative 14 is less than the significant level of 0.05. The density has increased significantly as the hurricane caused the ecosystem to fall below its preferred density, and the 20 years of growth are recognized as a recovery period to return to the natural state of the forest. The growth rate is currently increasing but can be expected to plateau once the community moves towards its climax. There are only so many resources available in one area, therefore the growth cannot continue to increase indefinitely. A regression analysis was performed to determine the relationship between the diameter at breast height of sites in Point Pleasant Park measured in 2004 to sites measured in 2024. The regression analysis reveals that there was a significant decrease in diameter at breast height from 2004 to 2024, as the p-value is 9.1 times 10 to the negative 5, which is less than the significance of 0.05. The relationship between changes of DBH in 2004 and DBH in 2024 reveals what stage of succession the forest community is currently in. Therefore, the forest community has changed in the fact that trees have decreased diameter from 2004 to 2024. This indicates that the forest community is still in the early to mid stages of succession. The decreasing tree DBH indicates that there are more young and small trees than mature and large trees. As the trees move towards their climax, the DBH will increase as the trees will be maturing.
The data was collected to observe how the dominant species of 2024, the red maple, changed over time and to predict what will occur to the red maple as the forest at Point Pleasant Park moves towards its climatic community. The data was collected each year from 2004 except for 2005, 2007, 2016, and 2020 by students of Introductory to Ecology at Dalhousie University. The data has been collected from the same 6 sites since 2004, and any living tree greater than 2.5 centimeters at DBH was recorded. Figure 1 shows an increase in red maple density over 400 meters squared of approximately 180 trees at Point Pleasant Park from 2005 to 2025. This experiment was also performed to observe the change in the dominant species of 2004, the red spruce, over time and to predict the density of the tree as the forest at Point Pleasant Park moves to its climatic community. The data was collected during the same process as the red maple in Figure 1. From 2004 to 2025 at 6 sites across Point Pleasant Park, totaling at 400 meters squared, and only living trees greater than 2.5 centimeters at DBH were documented and recorded. Figure 2 displays the increase in density of the red spruce in Point Pleasant Park of approximately 30 trees from 2004 to 2025. While both the red maple and red spruce have increased in density since 2004, the red maple has experienced a greater increase in density over the same period of time as the red spruce. The red spruce may have had a lesser increase in density as they were overmature and experienced little to no regeneration. Additionally, the red spruce may have been affected by the spruce spider mite, limiting its ability to increase in density at Point Pleasant Park. Ecologists and scientists who studied the vegetation and forest at Point Pleasant Park recommended a move to a mixed forest and for some cutting to be done to the trees in an effort to allow the forest to move towards its climatic community. At this time, there were little to no shrubs or other small greenery to attract birds, squirrels, etc. Once the red maple increased its density, the community of the forest at Point Pleasant Park began to move towards its climatic community.
To answer question 3, which is stated at the top right of the slide, the assessment of long-term trends in species diversity after Hurricane Juan in 2003 was done via analyzing the Shannon Diversity Index, or H prime, across 6 study sites in Point Pleasant Park from 2004 to 2023. The mean Shannon index increased from 0.5 in 2004 to 1.75 in 2003, a 250% increase, indicating greater species diversity over time. Linear regression was done and outliers were removed to improve overall data trends. Those years can be found on the slide. Slope of 0.06 and R-squared of 0.3352 showed a positive trend in Shannon diversity despite annual fluctuations. However, the R-squared value suggests that only 33.52% of the variation is explained by time alone, meaning other ecological factors such as disturbances, climate fluctuations, and species interactions also influence diversity. This increase in Shannon diversity reflects secondary succession. After the hurricane, the forest was dominated by a few early successional species, leading to low diversity. Over time, new species colonized and established increasing species richness and evenness, which drove the rise in diversity. This pattern aligns with the classic forest succession models. As the forest approaches a climax community, we predict the Shannon diversity will continue to increase, but eventually stabilize. During early and mid-succession, high colonization rates drive diversity up, but as competition intensifies, dominant species such as the red maple and red spruce may outcompete others, reducing evenness and slowing diversity gains. As H prime value of 1.75 is still low for a mature forest, suggesting that while the ecosystem is recovering, it has not yet reached its final successional stage. In summary, species diversity has increased over time due to forest recovery and succession. While further gains are expected, competition may eventually lead to a plateau or slight fluctuations consistent with competitive exclusion dynamics.
In the analysis of the 3 previous questions, we have determined that Point Pleasant Park is currently in the mid-stage of succession. As Point Pleasant Park is an urban environment, there are also additional stressors that will delay recovery and succession of the forest. Point Pleasant Park is surrounded by saltwater on 3 of its 4 sides and an urban residential area on its final side, making it isolated from potential seed dispersal, which would help replenish growth. The urban environment also brings along associated risks, such as human traffic and invasive species. Two-eyed seeing is an indigenous concept that incorporates the approaches of traditional indigenous views alongside the views of Western scientists to highlight the strengths of each and earn a more well-rounded understanding of the studied topic. I believe that this approach to experimentation is optimal, much like collaboration often yields better results than individual work. One way we can incorporate an indigenous perspective is to truly view ourselves and all the urban environment that surrounds Point Pleasant Park as a part of the ecosystem, and therefore the recovery plan, ensuring that on top of the effects of the hurricane, we are not contributing to the damage of this ecosystem, but rather the recovery. This may include limiting where people are able to travel, such as blocking off certain parts of the park that were greatly damaged. Point Pleasant Park's recovery following Hurricane Juan highlights the critical role of natural regeneration. The biodiversity and abundance of native plant species were key factors in the succession of Point Pleasant Park. Stability of the environment is heavily based on the mature native species that support the recovery of the environment. We can ensure that urban parks are planted according to this conclusion so that there are well-established native species to support recovery in the case of future natural disasters. Point Pleasant Park's recovery also highlights the environment's resistance and adaptability to changing climates. Urban planning should include species that can withstand a variety of weather conditions due to the issues that are becoming more frequent due to climate change.
In order to determine if the park has reached a climax community, we need to look for stability in species diversity, dominance, and forest structure. If the Shannon Diversity Index and species richness have stopped increasing and level off, that suggests equilibrium. Red maple and red spruce dominance would indicate late successional species have finally taken over. If the tree density and size, or DBH, stabilize, it means the forest structure is no longer changing significantly. A mature forest also resists disturbance. If hurricanes no longer cause major shifts in species composition, the ecosystem is likely stable. Evenness may slightly decline as competition increases, another sign of climax succession. Finally, stable soil conditions suggest a self-sustaining ecosystem. If all these factors remain steady over time, the park has likely reached its climax community. If not, it is still in succession.
Years after the other hurricanes, 2006, 2008, and 2017, showed a decrease in total density, red spruce density, and red maple density. Between 2019 and 2021, there was no large differences in densities compared to the years post-hurricane. Trees are slow growing, so missing 1 year of data collection did not have a large impact on the overall trend of the data. There is no data suggesting the significance of human impact at Point Pleasant Park. This is likely due to the fact that patrons of the park remain on the trails, which are free of trees and other vegetation. Humans may have an indirect impact on the park, as their absence may encourage small animals such as birds or squirrels to increase in numbers, which could impact the overall forest community. We would like to acknowledge that Point Pleasant Park is on the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq and that it is a sacred traditional meeting place of the Mi'kmaq people. We would also like to thank the following: Dr. Allison Schmidt and Tegan Robinson for their instruction and organization of this project, past students of Dalhousie's Introductory to Ecology class for data collection, and the Halifax Regional Municipality for allowing the monitoring and data collection of Point Pleasant Park.